Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Talented Universe. Yay, Marcia, I got the right name of the show today. Yay. It's been a crazy weekend, but I would like to welcome my co-host and a special co-host today for our wonderful guest, who I will introduce in a few seconds. But Marcia, how are you doing today?
Hi, I am doing great. I am here in Florida. I am the creator and admin of one of the larger fan groups, the ARC Series fan group on Facebook, and very excited to have fantastic ARC guests today.
Yes, we are very excited. And our special surprise co-host,
Woo!
I would like to welcome Daniel Fathers, Captain of Vega, to our show. Thank you for coming at the last minute.
No, you're so very welcome. This is so exciting. In fact, I feel as though the pressure is off. I'm coming on the show as a guest next week, but this is kind of like my kind of tech rehearsal, maybe.
Exactly. And so I am very excited that you took my invite and said, "You mean in 15 minutes?" And I said, "Sadly, yes."
That's a trooper. It
is a trooper. But right now, I would like to introduce Madeline Lewen, writer and co-producer of The Arc, which is really cool. And I just like to welcome you to the show. We are so excited. I chatted with you a while ago, and you said, "I'd really like to be here for episode 10." Because you wrote this episode.
I did. Yes. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you guys do. I've been watching some of the other podcasts you guys have done with the other writers and actors, and it's so awesome that you do this. So thank you.
Oh, we're welcome. We have a great time doing it.
Yes, we do.
It's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding. We all love the show. All love the show.
So awesome.
So, Madeline, just to get started, how did you get involved with Electric Entertainment? Let's start there.
So I've been working in TV for a bit now, and I'm happy to go through that whole, journey if you want. But I've written on shows like Jane the Virgin and Good Trouble. And I've, mostly written in the sort of dramedy space, nothing sci-fi. And
this is your first sci-fi genre. Okay.
Yes. And so I had a friend who had worked with Jonathan on The Outpost, and she connected us. But when I went in for the meeting, I was like, gosh, I don't know why they want to meet with me, because my writing sample that they read was like a romantic drama. And I, pilot. And I was just like, why would they want to meet with me? And I watched a bunch of The Arc and thought it was amazing. And I was super into it, but I was like, I'm so confused. And then we met, and they basically were like, we're really looking for someone who can bring some romance to space. And I was like, that's me. I can do that.
Now, was this first season that you started with him, or was this?
No, season 2.
It was season 2. Okay. That's what I thought, that I wanted to clarify to the audience too, because I think it was season 2, but okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Romance season 2. I haven't seen any romance, but I'm kidding.
Well, they obviously can write romance without me, but I think they were looking for a little more soap, a little more, of the kind of shows that I had written on and the kind of stuff I tend to write. So, which I really appreciated, because I feel like it's so smart to hire different kinds of writers with different strengths and different weaknesses. And a lot of times in rooms, people just they're all kind of the same. And I thought that was so cool. And then it's just been an incredible experience. And now I'm so obsessed with sci-fi. And now I'm writing like a sci-fi rom-com. And, the sci-fi is now seeping into everything that I write because
of that?
Because of The Arc. Yeah, totally.
Let me go. I have a comment in here from Papa Socks. I don't know if it's someone you know, but they have a comment. Wow, this is the first sci-fi that you had written.
Yes.
So thorough. And then it's romance to space. Baby, you did that. I am invested. So that is
It was
cool.
not just me. It was a group effort.
It was a group effort, but but as you said, but hey, that is perfectly fine. And I think I'm going to go to if he is ready. Daniel, are you ready for a question for her or comment, or you want me to go to Marsha first?
Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Okay, Daniel, yeah, go for it.
Madeline, it's very lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Even though, and thank you for the wonderful words and character that you wrote for me, and for everybody else. So I have a writing question. It's so interesting that sci-fi was not necessarily your experience as a writer, and that they sort of clocked you and said, okay, we need some romance in space. But from an acting perspective, also I write. I've started writing for a few years now.
Oh, cool.
And I think everything is about relationship. Relationship to self, relationship to others, relationship to the environment. But so if you're an established writer in that regard, what kind of research did you, apart from watching the the first season, which I watched as well in my research for understanding the tone and the genre, etc. But what sort of technical research did you do specifically for the sci-fi part of it? The jargon, the world, the life, and how did you incorporate that into the relationship stories?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, first of all, that it's about the relationships. I mean, I could never write on a show where it's just like, I mean, I don't know what show this would be, because every good show obviously has to have amazing characters that we care about. But of course, it's the characters that's going to draw you in and that's going to keep you invested. And that's why I'm able to write on this show, because the characters are so good and the actors are so good, and we care about them. And so that's why I knew I could do it. But to answer your question, it's so funny. In the months leading up to, like, before I got this interview, I saw Interstellar for the first time, and it like blew my mind. I just was absolutely obsessed with it. I couldn't stop talking about it. And it led me on this crazy journey, even before I knew about the show, to just researching a lot about time and space and light years and relativity and all these kinds of things. Like, I just got really interested in almost like the poetry of it all. It just felt so beautiful. And I have a theater background, so a lot of times in the plays that I write, they're a bit more poetic. There's a bit more metaphor going on. And so I was just really interested in like space lingo and how that connects to our everyday life. And so then when this came up, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. And then I started listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast, Star Talk, which I love. It's just absolutely fascinating to hear what's going on currently. Obviously, just reading tons of articles about anything that's going on in space right now, or people looking towards the future of what they think is going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years. I read a bunch of short stories in the sci-fi space that really helped me. A bunch of movies. I started watching Star Trek episodes, Next Generation, for the first time, and falling in love with that show, and going through sort of the best of and seeing, who that fan base is and why they love it so much. And then I became a fan myself. So a lot of trying to just sort of dip into different sources, movies, TV, books, articles, and podcasts, to try to just understand like the real stuff that's going on, and then the fiction side as well. And it was so much fun. And like I said, even after we stopped writing this season, I'm continued reading and absorbing all of this because I just find it fascinating.
That's such a great answer. Thank you. So you're like just a true professional.
I just think like any good sci-fi, there's a kernel of truth to it, So whenever we come into the room, we would just talk about, did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? And like, I thought in season 1, the Comet Water episode was so brilliant because there was a level of truth to it. There was a level of science to it that was like, could that really happen? Could someone really do that? And that's what makes it so interesting. If it's too outlandish and too crazy and makes no sense, it's just not, it's not going to feel real, and it's not going to feel enticing. So, I love research in general in any genre. I just, that's kind of where I start and then go from there.
Yeah, I'm the same way when I'm doing characters, whether it's a period piece, whether it's American or British or European, doesn't matter. I'm just research and prep crazy. So I totally get it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And by the way, I did not write 209. That was wonderful, James, in the episode where you were introduced with your character. And he did an amazing job of because your character comes in and then is very important very quickly. And he did a great job writing that. And you did a great job bringing this fully formed person into the story very quickly. So congrats.
I look forward to seeing it, and I look forward to speaking about it. But tonight is about you.
Yes, that is true. Marcia, are you ready with the question?
I sure am. I'm going to segue off, branch off of your discussion about how you watched Star Trek and some other things to sort of whet your appetite for the arc. And I believe you wrote The Other You as well.
Yes, I wrote The Other You, and then the murder history one, and then 210.
So looking at The Other You, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you saw the Mirror Mirror of Star Trek, and that of course is one of the most beloved of the original series and has repeated itself in other incarnations of Star Trek. Was a little flavor of that in that episode?
Yeah, of course. And JP and Jonathan were my Star Trek gurus. So, they would talk about it all the time and say, watch this episode and that episode. And yes, I loved that episode. I thought it was so good. And we talked a lot about how what's cool about our show is that it's serialized. And so you can have these crazy things happen, but then it continues to impact the characters in future episodes, So like, I love that The Other You was a standalone episode and you could tap in and tap out, and that's great. But also there's things in that episode that continue to come up and could continue to come up in future seasons even. So that was what was really special, I think, about our take on it. And I think Star Trek is so brilliant that the challenge is then you're like, okay, if we're going to try and do something that they did, how can we make it different? How can we make it our version of that? And I really, of course, looked to Jonathan to see, like, and Dean and JP and all the writers to see, like, how can we make sure this isn't just totally redundant? It has to be specific to our people and our show and the way that we do things. So I hope that we did that. But yes, I loved that episode. I thought it was amazing.
It looked like so much fun for the actors and it sounds like it was fun to write. One of the scenes that pops into my mind is the changes in the characters. Say, for instance, Alicia, when I and I go, oh boy.
Well, it's so funny too, because I had just started writing on the show at that time. So that was my first episode of the show, which is quite hard because it wasn't really a standard episode. It was these characters that you're, supposed to be able to write, and then this other version of them too. And so it was like a real deep dive, and I didn't know what was happening. And it was my first intro into sci-fi, and we broke like the first 4 episodes in a month before the strike, as I know the writers have talked about that. So It was really crazy. Like, that was a very hard first episode to write because I just it was so much. And then once I did it, and with the help of everybody, I was like, okay, now that was a true crash course in the arc, and now I feel like I can write the future episodes. And the other two that I wrote were a lot easier to write after that.
And as you know, many of the actors and other writers have been on, and Ryan, we learned about Ryan's background in ballet. So he,
so cool.
So did you know about that as you were?
No, I didn't. It's so cool. No, and I haven't met any of the actors. I haven't been to Serbia. I haven't been on set. So a lot of what I know about them is from Jonathan or from researching or Instagram or, so no, I love learning these little tidbits. It's amazing.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know about that, about Ryan, his ballet, but I have a ballet background as well. I trained at the Ballet Rambert. But listen, we're not going to write that into any series.
I mean, maybe we should. Let's not, I'm dying for a musical episode of The Ark. I've talked to Jonathan and JP and everyone was very pro of that idea. We couldn't quite figure out how to do it, but never say never.
No.
Now see, now I really can't wait for Daniel's episode, because I have many questions to ask.
Me too.
Although that would be cool, wouldn't it? A sci-fi musical. Has anybody done that?
Yes, they have.
Or have they?
They have. Yeah, Star Trek just did it last season on their. On their prequel show of with Captain Pike. So they did it, but
you can't have too many of those.
That's right.
No.
I started in musical theater, so I'm like, that's all the way.
I see it. I see the crystal ball.
Yeah, it's like, okay, how am I going to do this? Let me go. Papa Socks had a couple of other little comments, and it's like, the next generation Star Trek was cool, but the original with William Shatner was epic.
Yes, I've seen some of that. I need to see more. There's so many episodes. I'm like, my deep dive is going to go on for a long time.
Yeah, as a kid, I grew up on, the original. I mean, look, it was black and white when I was a kid. How old I am. But I had the privilege of working with Bill Shatner, because I'm Canadian, he's Canadian. I worked with him. We just did a bunch of commercials. But
cool.
He is such a character. Oh my word.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's I just love working with him. He's very, very cool.
That's awesome. Oh, you guys have a lot of questions to ask Daniel in this
Oh
section.
yeah.
It's good. I mean, I'm glad I did this, because now it's like we're gonna have a lot of questions for Sunday. So
and plus he does a killer New York accent, by the way.
What can't he do?
Because see, I remember you in the Prince movie with where you played Rudy.
What was it? That was a Christmas movie, right?
Yes, it was. It became one of the surprise hits on Netflix. So much so yes. Yeah. Anyway. I'll save that for later. But yes.
Yeah, back to sci-fi.
There you go.
But so so another one of your episodes, your next episode then was It Can't Be True,
yes.
Which was
I know the numbers, not the names, but
it was 7.
Yeah, the murder mystery.
Yes, the murder mystery, which was the whole surprise with the control of Kelly and
Lottie.
That was a very dramatic episode, very different from your first one.
Yes.
So
it was cool. That one was fun to write because, I definitely feel I love the sci-fi stuff, but it's also fun when there's episodes that are more just really focused on the characters and why everyone is acting a certain way, less about, some actual like comet or something impacting the ship. So that was a fun one to just really dig into these people. And I enjoyed getting to know all those characters a lot better and understanding Lottie and Kimmy better. And a lot of those scenes there were a lot of fun turns and reveals in there. That was fun and a little soapier and really fun to write.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I have,
Oh, you have another one?
no,
Martha?
go ahead. No, I'll
Okay.
I'll send it back to you. I have more, but
Well, I was going to ask a question later, but then this Papa Socks he knows what's going on. If the writer ever does a live, I would love to see the writers' workroom as they hash out an episode. So awesome, and how they cook. Well, funny you should ask that, because JP, basically, he had seen that we had done an episode last season of 8 of the actors. And we have already decided we are going to have as many writers on at the same time and do an episode. I don't know if JP told you we were going to do this.
No, he did. I watched most of his podcast, but maybe I didn't see that.
You might have missed it, or we did it afterwards. We could have done it after the show.
No, that's amazing. I love that.
But no, India knew, and
I love that.
I started asking India when she was on, and she said yes before I even finished the question.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
So I know, and same thing with Mr. DeLorean. He said yes. So I'm hoping if the schedule permits, would you like to do with as many writers as I can get on at the same time? We can just hash out writers' room stuff and things like that. Would you be interested?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would have killed for that when I was coming up, and I was trying to figure out what a writer's room was like. And for anyone who is interested in writing TV, I think that would be such a gift to see what really goes on, because it's so specific to each show, and there's really no way to understand how it works until you're in it. So I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so nice because the fans in the chat room, I mean, they could ask the actors, and they were all there, and they could ask the same questions several. I mean, it was really good.
Right.
The same thing if people have writing questions, you're all there.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Totally.
So I will let you know that's going to be after Electric Con.
Great.
So because we're going to do it all after that, so more people can watch it. It will, it'll be finished in the United States. Some other countries will be further along in it too. So it'll be nice. It'll be nice. But
love it.
Michael, I have a question for Madeline.
Oh, sure.
About the writer's room process specifically for the arc. Do you mind if I ask it?
I'd love you to ask it.
So, as you mentioned, Madeline, the writer's rooms are different. They're structured different. The hierarchy is different. The process is different, etc. from show to show. Can you explain sort of at a high level how the writer's room for the arc, especially on the episodes that you've been working on, works, and how much directive do you take from Jonathan, and do they give you the ideas and go, okay, here's the outline, boof, write it, or take us through that process?
Well, it's a really it's such a privilege to work on a show with a small writer's room. So this was me, JP, India, James, our wonderful writer's assistant who also wrote an episode, and then Jonathan, who's the showrunner, and then Dean coming in and out and, reading everything and giving notes that are extremely helpful. But so that's a very small room. I've worked on shows with 15 people in the room, and it's a very different vibe. So on this show, basically we would come in, we would talk sort of big picture about the season. Jonathan and Dean always have ideas about big picture things, where the season's going, where the main characters are going. And then we would talk about specific episode ideas. If anyone has, this is sort of a random one, but could be fun, or this is something that could connect back to that other idea that someone pitched. And we would talk about that. And then you sort of organize it loosely. And then we go episode by episode, and we break each one in a lot of detail. We go through, and I know some of the other writers talked about, we use Writers Room Pro, which is a digital version of a whiteboard, essentially, where we'll go through every act, and you kind of do it as it's like index cards going through scene by scene. For each act, you go through the order of them, you go through exactly what happens in them, you go through every act break. But there's a lot of room to fill in, and I actually felt like there was a fair amount of freedom on this show in a really nice way to find the path through the scene. So maybe people pitch specific lines of dialogue that you like, or maybe you generally know where a scene starts and ends. But a lot of times when you would sit down to write it, you really had to find your way through in a way that I found really empowering. And I also felt like the notes process on this show was really great. There was just so much trust. Jonathan really trusts his writers. And so someone would write a script and send it to the room, and then everyone would give their notes. And then you just take what works for you and what you think is good. And the ones that you don't agree with, you don't have to take, that's fine. And then, Jonathan might do a pass after, but a lot of the stuff that you start with really ends up on TV, which is really cool. A lot of times that doesn't happen. And so I felt, in general, I would say it works the way most writers' room works, but it has this show has a lot of trust in it, I would say. And I think you can feel that, like you can kind of tell, or the episodes that James wrote is a little bit different than the ones that JP wrote, than the ones that India wrote. I can tell, at least, because I know, but not so much that you're like, whoa, where's the tone and who are these people? Like, there's obviously a connective through line for all of them, because Jonathan and Dean are watching for that. And yeah, it was just an awesome experience. And everyone really got to play their part, in the room in a really nice way.
How do you deal when there's a little conflict? Because everybody has a personal opinion, and we all have sort of egos and pride, and we get attached to ideas or scenes or whatever. So how do you deal with, let's say you're putting this forward and somebody else goes, no. And how do you solve that conflict?
Well, everyone is extremely respectful in this room. There's never any, no, that's a bad idea. Like, no one would ever say that. Everyone's very, they might say, that's interesting. I kind of saw it this way, or I saw it this way. And at the end of the day, Jonathan is going to be the one to make that decision. And so it's nice, because our job is to give him as many different options and, alts as we can. And then ultimately it's up to him to decide the direction. And he is such a good showrunner in the sense that he knows what he wants. Sometimes people don't know, and that makes it really hard. So I think that's part of why the room runs so smoothly, is because we all have all these different ideas of where it could go, but he really has his vision. But I do feel like this is one of the safest rooms I've ever been in the sense that I don't think anyone ever feels like they pitched a bad idea. You never feel like you can't say something, because I think Jonathan knows that someone might say something that's not right for the show, but that might make somebody else think of something that is. And a writer's room is like, it's like there's a ping pong ball going from one writer to the next. And when you all know each other really well and you respect each other and the room feels safe, there's never any conflict, because it's just like, oh, I don't know if that works, but what about this? And what about that? And then that's always how the idea comes. It's very rarely just from one person alone. It's often a collaboration. And oftentimes something that you pitch might end up in someone else's episode. There's no ego about like, this is my episode and my story. Like we're all like a hive, that's kind of how it works.
Good. That's refreshing to hear, because I can tell you from, joining the cast, even though I was there for 2 episodes, the main cast, Christy, Reese, everybody, so collaborative with each other.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I can tell.
Such a safe, it was like old school theater rep, ensemble company. We're all servicing the story and the fans. And let's, everybody's egos parked outside the soundstage, and let's tell the best story we can. And so, yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that, and I'm so not surprised, because I can feel that through the screen, and I feel like sometimes there's little ad libs and things, and it's nice that everyone all the actors feel so comfortable and know their characters so well that they can, you know, occasionally say something that's maybe not even in the script that might end up there because it's a safe place to do that, you know?
Yeah. It definitely was for me anyway. So that's good to hear.
It's so cool.
Marcia.
Yes. Well, getting to episode 10, which was a particularly gut-wrenching episode after the death of Lane. What a challenge to bring that through. You might know we have an episode review show that we do every Sunday where we talk about the episode with fans, and I was very excited to be able to ask you some questions. One thing that came up is the purpose, the overall goal of this episode. As a writer, what would you tell us?
I mean, I think that, you know, we all may have had different goals with it. So I'll speak for myself. For me, I really wanted, or I guess I would say I was most excited to see a different side of Garnett in this episode. It was such a privilege to write scenes for her that you have never seen before on the show, because she's in this situation that's not quite real, but it feels very real. And it's really character-based. It's very emotional. She's talking about her feelings. She's not trying to constantly solve problems. And I felt that it was important for the audience to see that she's so, I mean, we already know she's a three-dimensional character, but to see this new side of her. But in general with the episode, I also think obviously it was connected to Lane's death because, you know, I think the title of the episode is It Should Have Been You, right? Is that what's
Yes, It Should Have Been You.
And it's the last line of the episode.
Yes.
I think. So, you know, I think in a way it's an extension of 209, right? Because it's sort of her continuing to process Lane's death in this very twisted way where she I feel like I don't want to talk about it for people who haven't seen it, but I guess
spoilers are off.
Okay.
Up to 10. Yeah, okay. I know. I do have someone in the chat room that said they have not seen 10 yet. So, Mr. I forgot. Papa Sox go la 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 for a few minutes. Okay.
Exactly. But you know, for Garnett to have this romance with Ian that goes through years and decades and decades and decades, and then at the end to feel like that could have been her future with Lane, that is so gut-wrenching. Yes. And I think it's so smart that, and I say this is so smart because I think this was really Jonathan that guided this decision, that he never wanted Lane and Garnett to go too far in their romance before he died, because it really just lets their love hang in the air in this very heartbreaking way of like what could have been. And then in this strange way, she gets to live it out, but with the wrong person. And I just think that's like what this show does best, where you have these moments of like, now we're thinking about grief and we're thinking about death and love, and we're in this sci-fi show, and yet it feels so personal and it feels so real. And so I think the goal of this episode was really to process her grief around Lane, which obviously is going to continue. But emotionally, I think that was at the core of it.
Mm-hmm. And now that we have talked with you some today about not only your background and what you feel some of your strengths are, I see a lot more of why they gave this episode to you. Because another question is, how are episodes doled out or distributed? Do you pitch, or do you go after, or does Jonathan say, well, I think this is your episode?
I don't think so. We really rotate mostly. I don't think it was like, oh, okay, this is a super romantic episode, so Maddie should write it. I think that, we basically go in order in rotation. And again, it's all really, we are all very involved in all of the episodes. So I do think that when you get an episode, you might put your spin on it. And so, you might you might write to your own strengths, but I don't think this was like chosen for me. But I feel very lucky that I happened to write it because it is 100% in my wheelhouse and it's my favorite kind of thing to write. And, you know, it was so cool because like I was talking about the ping pong ball going back and forth in the room, like there's a line in the episode that means so much to me, even though Jonathan was actually the one that pitched it. I had been telling them weeks earlier that my dad has Parkinson's, and I was talking about something to do with like a neurological thing. And I was, you know, I was pitching something that didn't make it in. And then we're breaking this episode, and Jonathan said, oh, in this scene, when they're talking about the stimulation probes, maybe Bryce says, you know, my uncle has Parkinson's, and that's how he gets to it. And I don't even know if Jonathan connected that my dad has Parkinson's, and maybe that's why that was in his head. Like, I have no idea. Or maybe he knows someone with Parkinson's and it was just a coincidence. But I was so happy to put in that line, and I texted my dad and was like, how cool, this is going in the episode. But that's the way that the writer's room works. Like, that wasn't even my intention, you know, it just sort of landed there. So all that is to say, I just felt very lucky to write this one, but it's all a group effort.
And there was so much, some of us felt that we wanted to see even more of the relationship between Ian and Garnett. Was there more that maybe?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there were tons of scenes that had to get cut because basically once we realized we wanted to go through decades and decades, we had to figure out how to pare it down into one episode. Because I don't think it would have worked to extend it into 2. I think that would have gone on too long. And so then it was about, you know, we wanted to keep intercutting with Medbay and with our real world to keep that alive. And so you had to really choose which scenes were the strongest ones to go in and which were the milestones that we wanted to see, like the wedding and like them choosing to die. And that, you know, so there were tons of other ones that came in, and also a ton of other pitches of like, you know, do they have a baby? What are other milestones that go through a life? You know, what makes up a life? But this was what it ended up being, just for sake of time.
Mm-hmm. And then the episode portion with Alicia and Angus was a sweet part of that.
God, I love them so much. I love them so much. And again, talk about like a show that takes place 100 years in the future, entirely in space, and yet it feels so unbelievably real. And like, oh God, I've been there. You know, I love them so much. I really enjoyed writing those scenes, and their storyline through this whole season, I think, has just been so special and so sweet and so real.
Mm-hmm. Okay, back to you, Michael. Although, I have more.
Daniel, do you have anything else, or?
Oh, I did, but I've just been engrossed in listening.
I can relate. So that's why I went to you, Daniel.
I'm fascinated. I'll come back to you.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Let me go back to the chat room then. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I lost my mouse again. Oh, here we go. Okay. Papa Sock says, I'm muted. You can thumbs up when I can come back. Cool. Well, yeah, there you go. Thank you. So you can come back now. And because we don't like people that usually we post a big thing saying, if you have not seen this episode, come back after you've seen the episode.
Right.
But with the writers, you know, and you did do other episodes. So I said, no, I'm not going to post it all the time.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't know if you're going to remember this because you told us how I probably cut you off before you finished your story, but they interviewed you, and you didn't know why you had to do what you had to do. When did you know that they were going to make you a co-producer of the show?
Well, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the level, like writer.
Yeah, I know there's different. That's I know a little bit, but I don't understand it. So it would be great to.
Happy to explain. So basically, like if you write on a show for your first time, not just an episode. If you write an episode, that's great. But then if you get staffed on a show for the first time, so, you know, your job is to be in the writer's room every day, that level is a staff writer. And sometimes you might be a staff level writer again on another show, but eventually then you'll move up to what's called story editor, then executive story editor. Then I think it's co-producer, then producer, then then it could be supervising producer, and then eventually co-executive producer, executive producer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know. So basically, it's for the most part, you're just sort of on a track, and so it's based on whatever your credit was on your last show that you wrote.
Okay.
So
Okay.
sometimes it might be like, listen, I know you were a co-producer on this other show, but this show is very different from that, so we want her to be co-producer again. Or like sometimes it's like, listen, I am going to be so amazing and I've had so many credits that I'm going to skip a level. So things change. That's really something that gets worked out between your agent and the studio and lawyers and things like that. So
all the good people. Yeah.
All the good people. So so for me, I just had this meeting and that was it. And then when I knew that they were offering me the job, it was up to my people to figure out exactly what that was going to be. But co-producers was just sort of my next level based on the work that I'd done before. But, and it depends on the show too, because on some shows, if it shoots in LA, if that's where the room is, a lot of times, like on Jane the Virgin, I was on set constantly. And so, even though everything I just explained to you is true, there was one season where I was an associate producer on that show, which was a title that we sort of made for me at the time because I was essentially producing the show because I was on set.
You were there.
I was in all the meetings and I was doing the production meetings and all that kind of stuff. And for this show, I didn't do that because it shoots in Serbia. So it really depends. It depends on that. But I think a lot of people hear producer and they think, okay, so that means you're in the meetings and you're on set and you're whatever. And it can mean that, but not always. So it's very dependent on the show.
And what your experience has been in the past.
Yes.
And what you've told us, you had some experience. So
yes,
just a little bit, right? Just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I did, I'm from New York and I started in the theater world and I came out to LA when I was 22 and thought, oh, I'm going to hate it here. And then fell in love with TV and kind of worked my way up through these different shows and sold some of my own pilots and started writing movies and have continued to write plays throughout. And so this has sort of just been an amazing little notch on my belt because it's a new genre that I can add to all these different projects that I'm working on. So I've been loving it.
Yes. I don't want you to spoil anything, but a theoretical question.
Okay.
If there's season 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, would you like to go to Serbia to, I just want to throw that out. Yeah.
Of course.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to ask.
I just think these actors are so amazing. Like I just think this cast is incredible and I would love to be there and help answer any questions and, things that might come up because it's even harder for the actors in a show like this. I think, Daniel, you can speak to it more, but the directors on the show are amazing and they have a ton of information, but to not have the writer on set can be hard to not be able to say like, why am I saying this line? And why do you think this character does this? I'm actually curious, Daniel, what that experience was like for you, but I would, of course, would love to be there.
Yeah, no, I think it's always incredibly useful to have the writers representation from the writer's room, whether it's the showrunner who is, the storytelling, the creative, there with us all the time. And I know that you guys are writing in the States and we're filming in Serbia. And there's a time difference, but I do know that, the leads, Christy and Reese, and we do have questions. Of course we have questions, but I do know that there's a conduit, straight to Jonathan or Dean or whoever it needs to be to answer the questions. Sometimes when it's difficult, and I'm not suggesting it's on this show, but on other shows I've been on, sometimes when this situation arises, where there's a question that needs to be answered now because we're filming it, and this not problem, but this we need clarification. Can I do this? And sometimes the directors don't have the power to just say, yeah, that's fine, because they've been told, no, you can't touch it, right? So yeah,
that's hard. Yeah. And I think the fact that the show runs as smoothly as it does is because Jonathan and Dean are incredibly communicative and incredibly good at their jobs, that they're able to do it from afar, and they go to Serbia, obviously. They're in and out, but I think it speaks to how good they are as leaders, that because some people just wouldn't be able to do it. It's hard.
Yeah. And also my observation is that, on different films, different projects, everybody there's always a power. There's a hierarchy of who has the power. And sometimes it's the showrunners. Sometimes it's number one on the call sheet, in front of the camera. And so trying to sort out how much power you have to, if you do want to have a discussion about character or lines or clarification. I always ask for clarification first.
Yep.
Because it might be my preconceived ideas that I've got it wrong. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, you wrote this. Where are you coming from with this? And then maybe it might make sense. And I go, oh, okay, I understand that. Or, can we have dialogue? But I think it's always useful. I always think of a character like a 4x100 meter relay. So, and the character is the baton, and the writer is the first person runs that first leg with right. So I've got an idea. This character does this, and they're like this, and then the actor takes the baton and runs down the back straight and goes, "Okay, now I love it. And what I'm going to do is layer this on top of that, and then we give it to the director, and the director go, I love what you guys are doing, so let's do this and this and this, and then the editor goes, okay, I've got all these different options. How am I going to cut and finish the story?
I love that. I love that.
That's kind of how I see it.
I love that. Yeah, I don't think people realize how collaborative of a medium it is. It's a lot of people and a lot of different opinions. And yes, there's a hierarchy. And again, I think on this show, it didn't feel like there was a hierarchy in the room in a really beautiful way. Jonathan really made everyone feel like their ideas were equally important, which is such a gift. Yeah,
great. So I have one more question because I've asked a lot. How do you feel about actors changing lines?
I don't mind it at all. I think that it's important to get a take with what the script, what's in the script, especially if the showrunner doesn't know that it's happening. Like, I think it's good to get one or two that's as scripted, but then I think it's awesome to get, if it's okay with the showrunner, to get some other options, because I think the actors often know the character better in that moment than the writer ever could have. It's just a different thing when they're living and breathing these lines. So I think options is just always the best. I mean, if I'm pretty sure Jonathan feels that way, and if I were to ever run a show, that's how I would feel. You want to have options in editing, so I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that's it, having options.
Yeah.
And ultimately the actor doesn't have the power, unless it's in their contract, to have editorial rights anyway. So the show, whoever has the ultimate power of, this is how I want this character, these are the lines I want, this is the story. So yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, some writers are word perfect because there's like a rhythm, there's some shows where there's a rhythm to the dialogue, and it almost feels musical, and it's like they don't want a word to be changed because they hear it in their head. And I understand that. I do get that, and maybe for certain scenes I would feel that way. I think it really depends on the show and the actors, but I do think when you have good actors, it's smart to let them do their thing, because usually they'll make the best choice.
Yeah.
No, this will be the last round. Oh, okay. This will be the last round of questions. I'm going to go to Marcia and then back to Daniel if you've got anything. And then I've got the most difficult question of this podcast to ask you at the end.
Okay,
Marcia.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about incorporating real elements of reality in, such as the beans, the soybeans that turned out to be ricin, and did that work in that particular episode? Mhm.
I don't remember who pitched it initially, but I loved that. I think we're always looking, to find ways to find elements of reality to bring in, and B, to find ways to connect different characters and different parts of the arc. So I love it whenever, the answer is in the bioshelter, the answer is in the bridge, the answer is in, because it just reminds us that these people are all connected and it feels real. What would you do if all you had was the different resources on this ship? You would need to rely on whatever you've got there, So, I don't remember exactly how that one came about, but we've done it before in other episodes where it's like, there's got to be something in bioshelter that can help us with this. But I thought that was just smart because it's not something that hopefully the audience didn't see coming. It makes all the characters smart to be thinking about things that way, and it feels real.
Mm-hmm. And it's fun because sci-fi fans love to go and do research and pick things apart. So I went and I looked. Okay, what is this real? Is this real? And I was delighted to find that it was. Yes. And so then I go, these guys are really on it, and that is super cool.
You try.
Yeah.
That's just pure BS.
That too, but and that's okay, because we can take that too, and it's fun to find out what is real and what isn't, and kind of what and spin it all around and swirl it in a pot.
That's the beauty of it taking place in the future too. It's like, if it's not 100% accurate, I feel like we have a little bit of wiggle room, because today, it's in the future. We don't know what kinds of things would exist, what kinds of medical devices would exist, what kind, so there's a little bit of leeway there.
And I did want to talk about the first scene in episode 10, or one of the first scenes, which was a tribute to Lane. That, I'm guessing, had to be challenging to bring together. And you actually brought a Vega into it, even though he didn't really know Spencer that well. And I thought that was a nice touch to bring that into it too. That had to be a challenge. Mm-hmm.
I think we all felt like it was really important for Vega Daniel to be there, because the only reason he was alive was because Lane died, and then he was able to use his liver. So it felt like he really had to be there to acknowledge that and honor Lane in that way. And it was a hard monologue to write for Garnett, because it's like, how do you sum up Lane's character in 30 seconds? You don't want it to be too general or too vague. You want it to be specific, but you also want to feel like it's something professional that she would say in front of the entire crew. And I thought that Christy nailed it, because it's like, you don't want her to completely fall apart, because she's in her captain mode and she's trying to sort of lead her crew to move forward in this very hard moment. But you also want it to feel emotional and real, and like, this is very hard. And I think she found that balance. And I really enjoyed the way we broke it, that it was like she would talk and then we would angle on certain characters to see how they're feeling. And that's one of those things where you write it and you think, okay, this is how it'll look. And then you watch it and you're like, oh my God, these actors are so good. You see Bryce holding back tears, quivering mouth, and you just like want to, all I wrote was, we angle on Bryce who's holding back tears, and then you look at that and you're like, oh my God. And Alicia sobbing. And, I thought that directorially, I thought they did a great job. And I thought the actors did a great job of just really selling what his death means to everyone in a very efficient way.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, shooting him out of the ship. Oh my goodness, it was quite emotional, and thank you for that, because we know that we had to say goodbye,
right,
in a way, and we appreciated the way that you helped us get through that.
Oh,
so,
I'm glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad. And I liked that it had a sort of military feel to it, of covering the coffin or whatever you would call that, the flag, and making it feel very momentous and very, emotional, but also traditional in a way that I appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Michael. Thank you so
Daniels,
much.
have you got one?
I think, I think it was a Vega who did the explosion, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I can tell. As you know, I haven't seen it because I'm in the UK, but I can tell you, I wish, Madeline, you had been on the set when we shot those, because, and I'm so happy to hear that you thought that everybody just nailed it. Especially, I was standing next to Christy when she was delivering that speech, and I was in awe, and I was moved personally. I was moved, in her performance. So I'm so glad that the gravity of that situation was caught. Starting with the foundation of what you gave the cast, and I just kind of thought about something that the liver that Lane gave Vega is really sort of a metaphor for the connectivity of the Ark and the Eastern Federation. It's what binds the two sides together, which I think is a beautiful metaphor and a very spiritual.
Yes.
The message is we different human beings may come from different places and have different philosophies, but we can get together. We can get along, and there's common.
Yes, and I loved your performance in it too, because I feel like there was a lot of warmth there. It felt like these two people were old friends, even though they had just met and were very recently enemies, and I think it was, to your point, it felt like, okay, there's a future here for these people and for these organizations. We can really hope for peace.
Yeah,
yes.
It's just the writing was fantastic, and for us as actors, when we get good writing and we get depth and layers of character, it's just yes,
wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay, are you ready for the question?
Are you going to ask me what number arc I was?
Yeah, I know. Everybody knows it now, but when we first started doing it, they didn't know what we were talking about. Okay, if Dean or Jonathan, or they said you could have a spin-off show and you were the captain or ran this arc, what symbol, number, logo would you have on that arc?
It's so, even though I knew you were going to ask it, I feel so lame that the only thing I can come up with is what I know other people have said too. It's 20, which is my birthday, November 20th. And just is the number that I always use for everything. So I just associate it with myself.
Well, if you'd like me to say a few of the other ones that people have said.
Please.
Ryan said 8 because his favorite football player has that number on his jersey.
Okay.
Reese, when he said, did you look at Reese's podcast? No. Well, Reese put me on the floor. I laughed so hard for 5 minutes because of what he said after he told us what he wanted on his arc. You can ask Marcia. I was a basket case.
We had to take over for him.
He said on his arc he wanted the McDonald's logo.
Oh, yeah, I heard you repeat that on a different podcast.
I remember. Yeah, so he wanted the McDonald's logo, and then we got into talking about Happy Meals, and I lost it. I totally lost it. Milan, oh God, why can't I pronounce? We call it Milan
Konjevic.
Thank you. His was infinity.
On
his arc.
That's good. That's
so
right.
everybody's had something a little different, and one of our newest ones, and she knew it was coming. Sandra, the director, she knew it was coming, but after we had talked to her in her podcast, she changed her mind.
Oh.
So because of what we had talked about, her arc has a skull and a heart.
Oh.
Because in all of her episodes, you got a death or you got
That?
love.
Yeah, I
and
love
so
that.
so that's what she did. So maybe that helps you think of something different besides 20.
Yeah.
But if you want 20, that is perfectly possible.
No, I did think
Absolutely.
about it the other day, and I couldn't think of anything. And it's I gotta keep thinking. It's my same issue. I think it'd be cool to get a tattoo, but I can't get one because there's nothing I can think of that would be like important enough to tattoo on my body. So it's a tricky question, but I will keep thinking about it.
Well, I will put 20 down, but if you do change your mind, email me and let me know.
Okay.
Because we kind of do make you an art.
Okay.
We send it to you.
Well, okay, wait.
Or sometimes it gets posted. So.
I have one thought just popped into my head, which is I have a ring that I'm not wearing right now, but it's very special to me because my mom owns a jewelry store, and she got me this ring by a designer that we know and love. And on the inside, it's inscripted. It was for my 18th birthday, and on the outside, in ancient Greek, it says "Know thyself."
Oh.
It's just one of those things that I wear it and I feel like, okay, if I'm going into a situation and I don't know quite how to handle it, it's like, know thyself. It's sort of a life mantra. So that's a little long, but the ancient Greek idea is kind of.
We might be able to do it. So I will send that to our little graphic person that has been doing the arts.
Love that.
I do love that. I do love that. See, now Daniel has got a heads up.
You got a heads up now.
About what we do.
Now I want to try and be cool as well.
Well, they all started with numbers, and then some people started doing symbols, and then the logo started, and it was like, oh my
all
goodness,
bets are off.
This has just got it's just gone crazy.
Who wanted the McDonald's art? Was that Reese?
Reese.
Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, he has young kids, so he's probably
that was the Happy Meal part. Yes.
Oh my God.
Happy Meals coming,
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
It was just so fun. Madeline, thank you so much. I will let you know when I have possible dates for the Writers Podcast, and I'm gonna try to get Jonathan to come on too.
Oh my God, you must.
Yeah, I must. But it's just a matter of his schedule and everybody else's. But we're really gonna try. So.
Oh well, thank you so much, and thank you, Daniel, for coming on. It was so lovely to meet you and talk with you, and thank you for your wonderful performances.
Oh no, you're very welcome, and thank you for the wonderful character and the words, and hopefully we do get to meet each other. Yes. Maybe even on set, and then I can say,
that would be nice. Yeah, that'd be nice.
6 seasons in a movie is what I say.
Yeah, that's Marsha. What Marsha wants. I said 2 movies at least. So, and I said season 10. So,
Thank you both. Thank you both for being here. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Pet Pest says thanks all. And we had a lot of lurkers that didn't say anything in the chat room, but we have that a lot. So
that's great.
Hey, we're just happy they're there. And
thank you.
That's what's great. But thank you for coming. Everyone, as I said before, we have Daniel on our podcast next Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific. And in the UK, it is at 8 p.m., I believe. And if you are one of our viewers in Serbia, which is some of the other cast, it will be at 9 p.m. on Sunday. So we hope to see you all there. From Talented Universe and NDB Media, thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.